Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel, Kalanati. Today I'm going to be doing my first quarterly check-in on reading statistics and goals for the year. If you are new here, I keep track of all of my reading statistics. I usually do a big, huge statistics video at the end of the year, but I also do these quarterly check-ins because I like to see my progress and I like to course correct throughout the year if necessary. Possibly I take these things too seriously, but I'm a very challenge statistics-driven reader. Anyway, you probably know what type of video this is, so let's get into the numbers and the goals. I read 63 things in the first 3 months of 2021. 34 were books, 9 were novellas, and 20 were comics or manga. I'm also, for the first time ever, doing a page goal, so I'm not just tracking the number of things that I am reading, I'm also tracking the page count. And I've mostly started doing this because I'm kind of just using the story graph on the side, and that lets you do custom challenges, and the page count goal is like a built-in challenge, so I just set mine at 65,000 and I'm doing pretty well so far. I read a little over 17,000 pages in the first 3 months of the year. I've never done this sort of goal before. I've always sort of judged my reading by count, by number of things, and so it'll be interesting to kind of track the page count alongside that. It gives me a little bit of motivation to read longer books as well. So, of those 63 things I read, 17 were written by men, 44 were written by women, and 2 were by non-binary authors. So yeah, 2/3 of what I've read so far this year has been written by women. I should stop being surprised by this, but I'm always overestimating in my mind how much I've read by men, and then surprised that the number is so much lower than what I expected. I don't know. I don't have a point to any of this, it's just the trends that I notice for myself. My most read genres so far this year are not that surprising. Fantasy is 33%, science fiction is 27%, romance is a whopping 17.5%. What can I say? I've been binging feel-good stories. And nonfiction is at 13%. I've also read 5% or less of short story collections, historical fiction, mainstream or contemporary fiction, memoirs, and thrillers. In past years, I've been very focused on trying to keep science fiction as my #1 genre. It usually works out to be about 1/3 of my reading, but this year I've kind of just letting things go where they want to go. I'm kind of curious if I just let myself read whatever and I don't really pay attention to genre, what will happen? I suspect fantasy is going to creep up to the top pretty rapidly, just because, I don't know why, maybe it's because a lot of the comics and stuff that I read are fantasy. I don't know. I really don't know. So we'll see if science fiction ends up being my most read genre this year or not. Now for sources, I think this is kind of funny because if you've been here for a while, you've probably noticed that trend I kept pointing out that no matter what I tried to do, half of what I read were things that I owned and half were free or things from the library. And it took me forever to be able to change that. I was working so hard at getting through my physical TBR, reading the stuff that I owned, getting that number down so that I could start using the library more frequently and reduce my spending, all of that stuff. And it wouldn't budge and it wouldn't budge until finally, I think in the second half of last year, it started to finally move. And finally, it seems to be in a new position and sort of just hanging out there. So 29% of what I read came from paid sources or things that I own. So these were purchases, gifts, and my audiobook subscription. And 71% of things that I read came from free sources, usually physical items from the library or digital library collections like Overdrive and Hoopla. I think that this is probably where my source breakdown is going to naturally fall now. Basically 1/4 things that I own and then 3/4 from the library. And I am not unhappy with that. I think that's actually a pretty good percentage, especially since I'm not aiming to stop buying things entirely. But this is a nice breakdown. And then my last 2 statistics are a little bit disappointing to me. 9.52% of what I read was translated. This is the first time that that number has really dipped below 10% in a while. I think probably in a couple of years. And I really want it to be above 10%, but reading works in translation hasn't been a like primary objective of mine for a couple of years. We'll see what happens with this, 'cause I feel like I should really just find some more translated stuff and add it to my TBR. And then 6.35% of what I read were rereads. This is something that also might change because, as you will see in a second, a reread kind of TBR is one of my goals. Will I actually tackle rereading this year? I still haven't made up my mind or not, but I do like to keep an eye on that number as well. So that is it for the statistics, and now I'm going to go into my 4 goals for 2021. I set these goals a little bit late in the year. I think I did my video on it in February, and I already kind of like knew in January what I was thinking about doing, but I haven't actually sat down and really worked on progress towards these goals yet. It's just sort of what's happened so far. My first goal is to track my book acquisitions and read them in a timely fashion. The point of this is to keep my book spending from getting out of control again, and also to help prevent my physical TBR from getting out of control again. And this is kind of an aggregate goal of a bunch of goals I've had over the past couple of years that worked really well for me. Just keeping an eye on the stats. So here are the numbers. I've acquired 28 books so far this year, and I've pre-ordered another 6, and I've spent $403.67 on all of those books, including the pre-orders. I have read 68% of what I've acquired so far, and currently my rate of reading what I own is less than my rate of acquisition, but that's not terrible. That's more of a function of getting a whole bunch of books all at the same time. And not having like the time at the moment to sit down and just read all of them at the same time. My second goal is to make progress on 2 current reading projects, and I have done my TBRs for this year for both of those projects already. I made a video about that. So I have 8 books on my TBR for my SF Masterworks project, and I've finished 2 of them so far, and I have 11 otherwise award winners to read for that project, and I've read 1 of them so far, and I've started a second one. I'm hoping I will have videos out for both of these projects in April or May. So far, so good on this one. My third goal is like the super vague one that I'm not even sure myself what the point of it is, and that is to make a new reread list. I talked about this a little bit in my original goals video. My original reread list was something that I sort of worked through for about 7 years. It was mostly nostalgic childhood favorites that I wanted to revisit as an adult. And I'm almost completely done with that list. So I thought I would make a new one, and I would focus more on favorite books that I read for the first time as an adult, pretty much. So I have no idea what I plan on doing with this. I have started a reread list. It's got a bunch of books on it. I need to work on it a bit more and like actually go through my bookshelves to decide on some things. But is it going to be an actual project? Probably not. I think I would like to do a video about rereading and like my experience with it, the past list that I worked through and stuff like that, but I haven't come up with a good like organizing idea or point to that video, which is why I haven't made it yet. We'll see what I do with this particular one. And then my fourth and final goal is to read 40% books by authors of color. The point of this obviously is to continue diversifying my reading and also to continue diversifying my TBR in general. In the first 3 months of this year, the books I read were 56% by white authors and 44% by authors of color, and total 27% of the books I've read were by Black authors specifically. I feel like I got off to a good start with this particular goal, but it's going to become more difficult as I dig into some of my other projects and things, which that's just the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I am pretty optimistic about that one as well. And as I have talked about before, actually trying to read more by authors of color has really pushed me to pick up things that I otherwise wouldn't have. It's really been an enjoyable experience and has introduced me to a lot of things that have been super fun and just gotten me out of my comfort zone somewhat, and I really appreciate that, which is a really big reason of why I'm pushing myself so hard to read more diversely this year, because it's just frankly fun and really rewarding. So with that, that's the quick overview of my reading statistics so far this year and my goals so far this year. I'm never sure if these videos are very interesting for other people unless you really, really enjoy statistics. So if you've stuck it out this far, thank you for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, bye.